Hey guys, before you get into the episode, this is Shon letting you know that I'm officially a brand ambassador for Lift Life. Lift Life is a fitness brand that focuses on selling fitness apparel and fitness equipment for all your workout needs. And what makes them so distinguishable from the rest of the brands is their ability to take street trends and implement them into their line of work. And honestly, I've been a fan of all the things that they have. It's been amazing, and I want you guys to be part of the experience. So if you go check out at the bottom of the description, you will see a link to Lift Life. And if you purchase now, you get to use my code, THESAFEROOM, to get 10% off your purchase. So make sure you go check out the link and make sure you use the code THESAFEROOM to get 10% off your purchase. I know it changed my life, and I hope it changes your life as well. Now, on to the episode. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Safe Room. I am your host Shon Williams, and I have a special guest with me. Me being a podcaster, I have to be connecting with my fellow podcasters in the game as well. So, it's a collab in a sense. Today we have Dominic from the Life on Hifi podcast. Hello, Dominic. How are you doing today?
Hi, Shon. Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's honestly a blessing to be able to connect with other podcasters, as you say. And I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
Oh man, this week's been crazy. I'm not gonna lie, a lot has happened.
Crazy.
No, I'm really feeling like I know people say this a lot, and even though I feel like it's not a saying that should be thrown around, it's like highly blessed and favored, but I truly do feel like highly blessed because a lot has happened with me this week. I became a brand ambassador for a fitness brand and everything. It's just been a lot, and I'm just so thankful. It's just life is good. Life is good.
Life is good. Okay, so crazy in a good way, because I was like, oh, I don't know if that's like bad or like if there's a lot going on
No,
like in
in a
terms of
good
in the
way. In a good
world
way.
in a good
Yeah.
way. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So you're here today, and we're here to talk about a couple of things. We're here to talk about your podcast. What do you do, and like what you're trying to like just build with your platform. But we're also here to talk about living in the Caribbean, however people want to pronounce it. I'm not going to get into all the politics of that, but yeah, like this is just going to be an open conversation, and really, it's not really about your experience if you're not comfortable speaking of that. It's kind of more just like an open general topic. Basically, we have topics on like why do people have the urge, at some points, because honestly, I know I have the urge where I'm like, you know what? I don't like Canada. I kind of want to move back to the Caribbean. I want to go back to Grenada, just start a new life there and everything. So like, why do we get these feelings? And what kind of comes into play? Does financial status come into play? Does our aspirations and goals? We're gonna go into all of that. So before we do that, let's talk about your podcast. So Life on Hi-Fi. So I found you because I knew Randall very well,
Mm.
and I listened.
Randall is good people's. I remember you telling me that, and I have to say it's really good people's.
Yes, absolutely. And I listened to the episode, and it was so motivational, so inspirational. And I just want to know like what got you into this? Like what made you want to start Life on Hi-Fi?
Um, well, there's a series of signs I was getting, I would say, from the universe, because I'm one of those people who believes in manifestation and, really connecting with the powers that be, a higher being, in order to really, achieve the things that you want to achieve, especially if you have some really big and ambitious goals. And my professor was telling me in my last year of university, you have a voice for podcasting. I kind of brushed it off. But then my friend told me the same thing. And then I would get these random compliments on just my voice. And so I think at that point, I'm already such a passionate person. And I love voice notes, for instance, on WhatsApp. I love voice messaging. So that's my area of comfort. I was like, you know what? Let me use my voice for good. And a podcast just seemed like a really cool medium to jump into. The topic though, Life on Hi-Fi, took a lot more thought. So maybe I spent 1 to 2 months brainstorming what I wanted to talk about. It meant that I could kind of dig into the topics that I listen to on my journey to self-mastery, quote unquote, when I listen to people like Oprah and all the spiritual teachers she brings on her podcast, I used to inhale and absorb so much of that content growing up. And I didn't really have that many friends to talk to about the conversations because a lot of them just seemed like I talked to my mom because she's there. She's very spiritually awakened and very
Right.
wise. And it didn't really seem like topics that, people in my age group would talk about.
Mm,
Um, and I thought, I should bring this to my platform, to my podcast. And this thing we always say in our generation, like living our best life, we want to live our best life. That's what Life on Hi-Fi is about. It's about reining in the creative energy needed for us to live our best lives. And I find a lot of creatives are empowered because they're thinking original thoughts, collaborating with people, and really manifesting something that started as a thought. And to me, that's like one of the highest forms of, being the best version of yourself versus consuming all the time. So I like right off the bat, I had to connect it to creativity. I also come from like a very creative family. My dad's a musician. I grew up in that world. And I
mm.
also love myself, like I'm a visual artist, so I had to tie it to creativity as a source of empowerment, and then also tie it to self-mastery, to tie in all the things I've been learning through the spiritual awakening pieces, Oprah conversations I listen to, all of that. So yeah, Life on Hi-Fi is just that one of those brands that it's a podcast, but I would say it's more so a brand where when you see it, you're supposed to know and feel that, this is about becoming a better version of yourself and tapping into that creative potential that you have. I don't know
Wow.
if that answered your question.
No, that was like eloquently like put. Like I'm not even joking. Like I love how you focus on like the creative mastery, especially. I believe that, especially for Black youth, especially from my experience as well, we see a lot of people that have a lot of potential, but sometimes they need that push. I was always that person that I had a lot of like passion and drive, depending on what goal or what aspiration I had. But I wasn't too sure if I wanted to do it because I was so worried about the reactions rather than the actual results at itself. Like,
Mm.
what are people going to think about this? Are people going to enjoy what I'm doing? Are people going to hate it rather than me actually say, let me just do it because I want to feel happy for myself? And you know what? Like, let me worry about if people like it or hate it after I put it out, and actually get the job done. So I really appreciate like your passion and your drive. And I know you mentioned about being a visual artist, and I'm assuming that's another interest that you express. So like go more into detail about that. Like how does that, maybe if it's either it's a distinguished thing, like is a distinction, or maybe it's a connection to like what you do with your podcast.
It's definitely a connection for sure. I mean, things started off as separate, and I'm trying my best in life. My goal is like in life is to make everything connect at some point, because no matter what I do, it's all Dominic, it's all me, and I can't be different people. I have to be authentic to who I am. So the way I can really connect with artists is being able to kind of, relate to them, relate to the even if you're not an artist, like you said something important, which is, you had to stop thinking about the reactions. And that is a part of putting yourself out there. It takes a certain level of courage to do that without letting what other people think about you or what they could say about you stop you from doing the thing that you want to try. And so that part of it, like whenever I have someone who's a creative and I know that they might paint like me, or they might do poetry like Randall, or they might sing, I know they're putting themselves out there, and that's how I relate to them on the podcast. And creativity to me, like I said, I paint. Creativity to me is also entrepreneurship, creating a business, anything that you
Mm.
have to, start from scratch and kind of make happen. That's you being creative, negotiating all of that takes creativity. But like to not come off topic too much, to my paintings, I always painted I shouldn't say always. I started visual arts like any other person, like arts and craft in elementary school, that kind of thing. Went off into the sciences. This is a different time in my life where I was pursuing medicine. That's another podcast. But I was kind of drifted away from art for a while. And then I went back and I was like, listen, like painting makes me feel the freest when I'm expressing myself. visually, like painting to me just allows me to kind of stop overthinking and to really go in and express myself. And I feel so confident doing it. And so, yeah, I have my own. I linked up with Vibe Arts, who is a non-for-profit based in Toronto, and they linked me with a mentor, Kofi Frempong. He was on my podcast. He's a visual
Oh,
artist.
Kofi?
Yeah, you know Kofi.
Yeah, what? Oh my gosh, small world.
So yes, very small world. He was the first guest on my podcast. So he introduced me to Vibe Arts, but he's also a great mentor, and they've um, really connected with me with other mentors. I was in their exhibition called Next, and that was my first time creating a whole body of work and exhibiting it with a lot of other artists, emerging artists in Toronto, to the community in Toronto, and that was a really great experience. I have art for sale. I have an art website. So it's not entirely on your life on Hifi, but it's connected.
Wow, no, that's absolutely amazing. I love how you do have everything connected to you and like what you want to do. Like I'll be honest, like for my podcast, the first season around, I was just kind of doing this for fun. I'm like, I'm just kind of have conversations depending how I'm feeling, whether it's something serious, political, or maybe I'm just having something for fun. But I did take a time for like, just to break and like have a reflection because I was going through school during like the
Mhm.
pandemic and for all my university college students, you know how that can be hectic, especially being
Oh yeah.
online.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it messes with your mental health. But when I came back, I wanted to go in a different direction. I'm like, you know what? I want to do something where like I want to put those who are doing stuff in the community or doing stuff that is building like whatever brand they have or building others up. I want to bring them on my podcast so my audience can be aware of the stuff that we're doing. So I started calling people who were doing podcasts like yourself or even having their own businesses doing their own initiatives, and I wanted that to be highlighted like focusedly on my podcast because I truly believe that community work it's probably the toughest work you will ever get
Yeah.
yourself involved in.
Yeah.
Like no joke, like it's such a struggle because you're not just like looking for results, you're also fighting all the barriers where it's like either finance or maybe there's issues with some other institution. It's always a battle between, so you always have to keep fighting and fighting. And sometimes like you get to the point where like I've done so much, like what more can I possibly do? And for those who are seeing success, I just want to like give them a stage and a platform for them to express their success to a bigger audience. So like that's something I've been doing with my podcast like most recently, and I feel like it's been really great. I've heard people come back to me and say like, "Yo, I appreciate the opportunity." I even still do the time where like I don't want this just to be like one episode I do with you, then I don't associate with you again. Like no, I'm gonna keep the same energy. I'm gonna keep the same love and everything. So like that's
I
something.
love that. Like you are part of what will make, the community grow and become better and have that, connection, because we can have our isolated conversations, but a podcast allows it to be something that can be amplified. So a conversation that could be done in a room or in the comfort of someone's home or in a car can be amplified. And those messages that you're talking about in your podcast is very healthy for people in our community to hear. So I love that you took a step back though. What made you decide? You said school and everything, but like what made you decide to come back? Was it hard to come back?
Oh, it was hard because I
Yeah.
will say I was going through a rough time, especially when it came to like classes and even work and everything. I was just being so bombarded and overloaded with stuff that it's just like I need to just take a time because like even with my podcast, I was like still on the go, and when I wasn't doing it, I was still like heavy because I'm a person that like you cannot leave me for a day without me doing something. I have to be doing something 24/7. I think that's kind of been my life ever since I've entered like the educational system. Like I've been doing things on the go. So when I finally took that month off, it felt weird, but it was so necessary because I'm like, I just needed to reflect and like come back where my mindset was like, okay, I know what I want. I know what I want to do, and I'm not gonna let any other clouded judgments like get in my way. So when I did come back, I felt more relaxed. I felt more confident in myself and what I wanted to like express. And just up to this point, I've seen so many things like in my life that has just been so successful. Like whether it's building my audience, whether it's me developing my own website for my podcast, I've just like I feel like I'm just heading up. I'm really heading up, and I'm really grateful that I took the time to just relax and just take a step back. And for people who are listening, if you feel that taking a step back may, like, if you're afraid, like, that's okay. Because I was afraid too. I was afraid that if I took a step back, I was like, am I going to get back on track? Am I going to be the same person? But sometimes, that fear is what can inspire you to get to the next level and get to your final destination. So it was just really helpful for me.
That's awesome. And it's funny you say that I feel like we're the same person in that sense where you're like 24/7, you can find something to do. I'm the same, like very restless, like
Yeah.
always finding projects like anything, like it's hard to get bored with the amount of things that we can engage in creatively. What would you say is your art form? Or do you
Oh.
do you identify as a creative?
I would say like I would identify myself as that, but like I'm not full like art. Because here's the thing, my sister's a dancer, and she's always diving into these different forms of art, whether it's dance, like she has a huge following. For me, like before, I wasn't really that artsy person. If I was in art, it was more of like maybe in high school. Like I was in like a couple of drama plays and stuff, and I love doing drama. I actually wrote like a couple of scripts. I like doing script writing, telling
Oh,
narratives like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
love that. I love you see, once you're talking to me, I'm gonna want to pull that out to be able to see, like the inner creative being inside of you. It's just
no,
who I am.
no.
But honestly, you creating this podcast means that you're a creator. So I guess the way I asked it made it seem like it had to be related to art. But I definitely see you as a creator because the way you said that 24/7, you can fill your days with something or your time with something, giving yourself something to do.
Right.
That's like your creative appetite talking to you, you know?
Oh man, like I love to talk. I love to have conversations. Like, and listen, like when I meet new people, I'm not gonna be shy behind the bush. I'm like, I'm gonna get to know you. Like, let's have a conversation. Everything. I will say this. Like, I'm a very persistent person, but also at the same time, when like that phrase where people say like your biggest strength is your biggest weakness, and like sometimes
Mhm.
I try to like find ways to control that because maybe my persistence is something that I love, that drive. But if I get too driven, like people are just kind of like, okay, Shon, you need to chill, pull it back a bit. So
Honestly, I can't say I don't know you personally like that, but I will definitely say people who what's the word? Like I feel like it takes a certain amount of drive and obsession to be successful in something.
yeah,
And a lot of people, if they don't align or feel the same affinity to the thing that you want to succeed in, they might think it's a lot, but sometimes it takes being a lot to. So I wouldn't discourage you from it, but also I'm not them. So,
no,
so
no,
if they have that experience with you, then I mean, maybe they have a right, but
yeah,
I would say don't try not to be too discouraged by that. Keep being yourself.
yeah, absolutely. So I know you doing your podcast and everything. There has to be a couple of like high moments and also I don't want to say low moments because I don't want to keep this negativity, but obviously moments where like you kind of went through a couple of troubles, like like what were those moments for you? Where was like the moments like you felt, what, this is like a huge success in my podcasting like so far, and this was the moments like it's just like I don't know, just like it just didn't feel right, and like not to say it was low, but like it was things that you need to work on.
In the podcast specifically, well, I can say, should I start high? I start with the challenges.
I would say start low so that way you can build up to the high.
Okay. So when it comes to balancing things that you're doing as a side project or the thing that's not necessarily earning you money, the passion project, the thing that you're doing for you, it's so easy to put off compared
Mm,
to the other roles and responsibilities in your life that other people are probably holding up a measuring stick over your head. There's a reason you have to do it, whether it's a job, you're being employed by somebody else, whatever it is coming externally. It's so easy to get sidetracked by those things and to put down the thing coming from your heart space because in your mind, for some reason, our mind just deprioritizes those things more easily and more readily.
yeah.
No, for me, I went through a really rigorous time in 2019 when it came to balancing my time and saving time for the things I love. I put down my art, but I also put down life on Hifi in 2019. Um, and that was really hard for me because I started with so much passion. I had all my graphics, my material, my launch went well. Like I launched with 3 episodes, and then I was recording episodes for my backlog. And it just got to a time where I was going through so much newness in like my career building. I just graduated that I found it so difficult to pour myself into anything else. I got so tired after work, so stressed out about deadlines and stuff that I just blocked myself out from my creative persona or creative being. And it in turn made me very unhappy, extremely unhappy, because I knew I wasn't tapping into it, and I knew I needed to survive in a way where it feels like I'm thriving. And so that year I didn't feel like I was thriving at all. And um, I had a, what do you call it? Um, oh, the art of War of Art, resistance. There we go. In the book, The
Mm.
War of Art, they talk about resistance quite a bit, especially for the creative. But I had a huge resistance to the podcast after a while. Like I would see it on Spotify and I couldn't bring myself to play an episode, or I would see like all the folders in my Google Drive planning for it and I just avoid them. It just
Mm.
reminded me of the thing that I failed at. And I would want to start and feel like it's way too long now. Like, my audience must be gone. Like no one wants to hear from me anymore. Like no one, it doesn't make sense. Like that person that you forget to text back and
Oh
it's so much time
man.
has passed. You're just like, yeah, let me just leave it there.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear from me anymore. So I was just making it worse and worse and worse. That was a huge challenge for me. So the peak that helped me was the same thing that I centered the podcast around, which is conversation. I started to have conversations with people who helped to uplift my spirit and open my mind back up to, starting the podcast. Like I had a life coach, and he was just, those people who help you to see the thing that you can't see at the time, like the light inside
Mm-hmm.
of you. He saw the light and he was like, listen, I think you should definitely start it and like share more about yourself and your brand, because you have so much to say, so much light to give to the world. I had a guest and she was in my backlog, and I felt so guilty because I didn't, I recorded. She was, hours away from me in terms of time difference. She was in the same location I was. She spent time to record with me and I never released it. And she reached out to ask me about it. And I was so apologetic. And she was like, honestly, never apologize for taking the time you need to do
Mm.
what you need to do. Never apologize for it. And
Right.
the guilt just melted off. Um, and then I had a conversation with someone who was just telling me how inspiring the conversations I had on the pod in the launch of the podcast was for them. And so I was just getting all these encouraging messages to like bite the bullet and go. And at some point, my partner, I was playing a raw edit of something I never released, and he was listening to the conversation, and it was actually episode 6, Finding Stillness with Nana Frimpong. And
Oh.
yeah. And he was listening. He's like, wow, that's a really good conversation. And I was giving all the reasons why it doesn't make sense to release anymore and da 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 da. And at the end of the conversation, I felt downright selfish and self-centered for wanting to succumb to my insecurities and keep it without releasing it. And so, yeah, I started off the podcast again with that Nana from Pong episode. And from there, I've just been really driven to keep going and to keep taking it into different directions and expanding and going at a pace that suits my life now. Because I think right now, longevity means so much more to me than trying to push as many as I can and then eventually burn out.
Mm.
Longevity and being here for the long run is really important to me. So I'm just strategizing on ways to do that.
Wow, that's amazing. I know you mentioned a part where it's like you felt like you weren't sure if you want to release episodes because you didn't think people were going to like view your things. Me right here, literally, like, oh my gosh, there were times I like so. My strategy was it like I'm trying to make like my Instagram presence known. Like let me make posts of like updates, new episodes, maybe like little like mini clips and stuff like that. And I say that social media can find a way to like take your mind, chop it up, and just stir everything to the point where you feel defeated. Because there were times where like I was so worried that like, oh my gosh, I don't know if enough people are like viewing this or people liking the stuff that I'm doing. And I was so worried, like, oh my gosh, like what if I drop this and then no one gets a reaction? And then like that's what led to like my break and everything. I'm like, you know what? Let me just step away from all that. And when I came back, when I started posting again, whether it was like new episodes or on Instagram, on Twitter, I never even to this day worried about, okay, how much likes do I got on this post? Like how many views do I get on this reel, or how many people will view my story? I don't do that anymore because I realized that number one, there's a couple things. Like there's two reasons for me. Number one, that shouldn't be like, my I would say like my kryptonite, something that kind of poisons my mind because it's about how I feel and how I'm happy at the end of the day. And number two, to be honest, I didn't even realize there were actually more people that listened to me beyond those likes and those views. Like it was
Mm.
crazy. And it made me felt so great when people actually walked up to me in person, like, yo, like when's the next episode? And I'm like, "Wait, you listen
That's
to the
so
podcast?"
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "You listen?" I'm like, "Of course, man." Like, yo, when's the next episode? I'm like, honestly, like it's coming soon. And like I thought to myself, like, yo, like I didn't even know these people even listen to it. Like even before, I used to post like the full episodes on my YouTube channel. But I told myself, you know what? Maybe no one wants to sit for like an hour just to listen or hear me talk. And then I had one of my guests a couple of months back where she told me like, yo, you need to start bringing back the full videos. I used to watch the whole thing, and I'm like, are you serious?
Oh, really? Oh, that's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, that's
crazy.
awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. So like it made me think to myself, you know what? Like sometimes like in our lives we do need to take our breaks and our times to just like recuperate. We should never tell ourselves or even doubt ourselves that we can't do certain things because other people aren't viewing it in the way that we thought it was going to be, like, oh, something big, something huge. And again, I like how you put it, like longevity. Like I'm really not trying to do stuff that's like just throw out a bunch of content and then just burn out. No, I'm like we're here for the
Mhm.
long run. Like especially the podcast game,
Mhm.
we all know how it's hard trying to like do this for a long period of time. I've seen people who kind of start like doing podcasts around my time as well. Like we're all like tracking on the same road and like we're just going on. And I'm hoping that it's not just me, but yourself and whoever is doing a podcast, that we're all building together and we're doing it
Yeah.
for the long run.
And you know what, Sean? Like, I think basically, so right now, I started at episode 6. Now I'm at episode 16. Um, I started off, I hit like milestones in terms of followers, and I've since hit milestones in terms of downloads. I've gotten over 1,000 downloads. And like, I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm just saying,
No, no,
like, the
listen, hey,
numbers
listen.
come.
Listen, man. There's times where you gotta be humble, and there's times you gotta show out the excellence. Okay.
And this is just progress from like starting back up in around January. So I'm just saying like the numbers will come, but like what really has helped me is focusing on that why.
Mm-hmm.
Focusing on that why, like the reason behind it, because sometimes numbers fluctuate and you can't control people's reactions. You can market the heck out of your podcast, you can invest money into it, you can do surveys, trying to figure out what matches people's interest. But at the end of the day, you can't force them to sit down and listen and force them to sit down and watch so that you can live your dream. Like that's just not sustainable. It's not authentic. So instead of wrapping your mind around that piece, like you said, like instead of making it your kryptonite, you have to focus on what's driving you internally.
Mm-hmm.
Is it making you feel happy? If it's not, then there's no way you're gonna keep going, and it's not gonna last, right?
Yeah.
And like bringing it back to the purpose of the podcast, right? Like, is there something in the world that's broken, or is there a gap in the world that you intend to help fill, that you intend to help fix? Because at the end of the day, if we only look at ourselves, it's going to be easy when ourself is not in the mood. Like when you
Mm-hmm.
think about the greater purpose of it, what it's doing, then sometimes it takes a little bit of selflessness to continue on with the project. So for me, it's when I started to feel like I was becoming selfish because I started to focus on hey, I don't know if people want to hear from me, yada yada. And then I started to think instead about this is a really great conversation. And if I was in a bad mood, this might help to uplift me and could help uplift a friend or someone I don't know across the world. Then that made me
Mhm.
want to push it out more.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who has an interest in podcasting or doing stuff like that, like go do it. Don't let any doubts like cloud you. I'm telling you, it's such a fun experience, and who knows, you may if it's something you want to do for just a short period of time, and that's cool. But if you want to do something that's like substantial and like has longevity behind it, then please go and do it. But I want to kind of like switch gears and everything because all I noticed that you have like an accent and everything. And I think it's a perfect way to kind of transition into the next part. So before we even get to like the question, I just want to know like your background and everything.
That's a good transition, eh? Like this guy's good at his podcast hosting stuff, huh? Okay, so I am from Jamaica. I grew up there, was born and raised there, and then I moved to New York for 2 years, and I've been in Toronto for a bit longer, for around 7 years now, which feels very long. But yeah, I'm from the Caribbean. You picked up on the accents.
Yeah, absolutely. See, my background is Grenada. I was born here in
Yeah.
Toronto,
You
and
mentioned Grenada. I was like, you said back to Grenada. I was like, oh, where's the Grenadian accent? But
it's not,
it
it's not,
sounds like
it's not there. Like my parents, they have it, but like it's not there for me. So neither my sister, but
have you been?
yeah, I've been there a couple of times.
Okay.
It's so amazing. The people there are so nice. Like every time you like leave, like there's always like a good morning or hello. Like you can't even experience that in Toronto. Someone says hello, like they're giving the nastiest like eye look in the corner, just like wait, who this?
It's something about being in the Caribbean. Like if you pass people and you don't say good morning, it's weird, you know. But here, everybody is very tuned in to themselves, and it's even worse in New York. I just came from New York the other day.
Mm.
Everybody's kind of,
It's just like
going
you're
on.
walking by, no one's saying good morning, no one's saying hello, and like
Mm.
honestly, that should be like experiment. I should like go out one day and just be just every person I see, hello, good morning, good afternoon. I just want to see their reaction. Like, are they gonna respond back? Or are they gonna be like,
Can you, I ask you one favor, if you ever do that social experiment, can you get someone to record it? Or could you
oh yeah,
record reactions? I would love to see how that would go down. Especially because would you agree? Because you're born here. Do you feel like, and you also have family in the Caribbean, so you have a
Mhm.
good sense of contrast. Do you feel like Canadians live up to their name of being nice? They're the nice compared to
Oh, it's
their
like a
cousins across
it's
the
like a
border.
double. I don't even want to say it's a double-edged sword. I think it's like it really depends where you're from in Canada, like where you resonate. I feel like there's certain areas it's like okay, there are people that are like super nice, and then there's other areas where it's like they're just normal, and then you find those areas where it's like oh wow, these people are actually mad disrespectful. And like I can't really speak on every province and territories, but like I will say this, like Toronto, it's kind of like a whole mix. Like some people you encounter, you may get those nice ones, you may get those ones that are just like whatever, and then you have those people who seem to have an attitude for everything, and you just don't know why.
Mm. I haven't actually experienced a lot of that here, but I will say sometimes I wonder if people over correlate nice to just not saying anything.
Yes.
So I don't think it's always the same thing. I think, anyways, I won't get into that, but wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, that's cool, that's cool. And kind of speaking on the Caribbean and everything. So
Mm,
this topic that we're about to discuss, I'll just like paint a little bit of context of how this came to be in my head. So being in Toronto and Canada specifically for such a long period of time, like there's times obviously I've been back to the Caribbean, but being here for a long period of time, it makes me wonder like, yo, what would it be like if I were just to move back and just live in Grenada? And like what would it just be to like live in the Caribbean? And I don't know what it is. I start these conversations with people and there's just such a like a just a dramatic reaction. Like people are like, why would you want to go do that? Like, aren't you happy here? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's just like there's
mhm.
no judging. It's just like it's just a thought. And I don't
Who
know if
are
people
these? Who
have
are these people you're asking? Is this family or other people?
family, friends, sometimes maybe like even people I meet for the first time. If we get to know each other a little bit deeper, we might ask those type of questions. But I feel like people here in Toronto, in Canada, like they find a way to just kind of like get trigger happy in a way. It's like, ooh, like why would you want to say that? Why did you ask a question like that? It's just like I'm just asking. Like I don't know if you get that sense because again, I know you said like your experience compared to mine is different.
That's a interesting That's an interesting remark because, to be honest, I'm guilty of being like, wait, why would you move? Why would you move from here back like there? And especially, so I've seen people who were born here, raised here, had like the first world experience, and they're like, oh, going to Jamaica, going to go connect with my people, all of that. And I'm just like, good luck. Especially if you've never lived there before, like good luck. It's going to be a crazy adjustment, but it was an adjustment for me to come here.
Yeah.
Not in the same way, because okay, where am I going with this answer? It's messy. It's really messy. It depends. So for me personally, if anyone asked me now if I would move back, I would say I would have to be in a position where I can help to change the way some things are set up right now there. Like I would want to be in a
Mm.
position of impact. I wouldn't want to just go there just to blend in and not really contribute in a major way to some of the things I grew up seeing that were broken, and especially coming here and seeing, more resources and more support for people who need a helping hand. Going back, my soul wouldn't be at rest. And if I can't
Wow.
help, I'll just be miserable. So um it's like beyond the like vacation, beach and the weather and the food and the music and the friends and more Black people and all the nice things that feels good. Beyond that, and thinking about minimum wage and jobs and technology and maybe helping to improve technology, the development of technology there, and like all those things like come into play when you're living versus vacationing there. And when I think about moving back, all of those things hit me. I think about high school. I think about what it would have been like if I had more resources and more exposure.
Mm.
So I do think of going back as great, but going back permanently, so many other factors come up that I know it's not going to be hunky dory. And I definitely want to level up myself first before going back, ideally. But I
Yeah.
love my home and I love the Caribbean. And like the feeling that you get there is unlike any other. So, and I would never shame someone for moving back, especially if they haven't lived there before. I'm just like, listen, you have an urge, or you have an appetite that, Canada cannot satiate, right? So you
Hmm.
need to go there and experience it for yourself. And, your role is different than my role and my role different from your role. Like everyone has their different roles to play. Um, and everyone has their different way or their different
Hmm.
path. So yeah, I try not to sway anybody from moving, or I try not to be closed-minded about moving back myself because Caribbean is a magical place. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love that mentality because I'll be guilty. The first thing if I'm moving back permanently, I'm like I'm about to hit all the beaches, all the crazy places. But no, like eventually I would have like I want to have a purpose for moving back. I know a lot of whether it's like especially for me like family functions. Like we always have like those stories where we talk about our time like in the Caribbean and everything. And sometimes it may get deeper to like okay, what do you experience now? Like, what do you see what's happening? I know sometimes where whether it's on the news, they're talking about the economy of all these like Caribbean places like Jamaica, like Grenada, or even like all the incidents that may be happening. Whether it's have to do with like climate change or something like that. I feel like moments like that. If I were have to go back, I want to address those certain things because like again, like I whether I see it on my phone scrolling down on a social media site or even a news article, or even like worse, like sometimes I be getting like WhatsApp clips about what's happening in the Caribbean. Like I don't know if you get the same thing where like your family members are sending like WhatsApp videos about what's happening, stuff like that. Like those are the
Mhm.
moments like that makes me resonate. Like you know what, if I want to go back, that's what I want to do. Like first off, I want to address these issues and bring significant change. Like sure, it would be great to leave a place where it's cold all the time to a place that's always hot all the time. But how much of that enjoyment are you going to have? It's not going to be permanent. It's just going to be like temporary and like, okay, move on. And then like what are you actually going to be there for? So yeah, when people ask me that question, I will say that like, I do want to go back and like have an impact on like wherever I'm going. I don't just want to be there just to like chill. I'm trying to do more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe you talk to me or we talk to each other a few months down the line or years down the line, and one of us is in the Caribbean, and there's no perfect time. And, you can't wait until you feel like you're a Bill Gates or whatnot. Not saying that at all, but definitely want to have some sort of purpose, purpose there. And I don't know. I don't want people to mistake it and think, okay, I'm going to the Caribbean, it's going to be a vacation home forever. Like,
Right.
there's so much that the Caribbean can use in terms of development and bettering the quality of life of people there. Granted, there's a lot of life lessons that Canada can learn from people in the Caribbean. The way of life there
Mm-hmm.
can be way more healing than the way of life here. Here, a lot of things are curated and fabricated out of somebody's head to mimic beauty, to mimic, you know, culture, like like intricacy and all that. While in the Caribbean, it's just so raw and authentic and natural and
Yeah, like I think Toronto, I think from history, like Toronto has this sense of like they try to become this like personification of beautification, like oh we want to do things this way. Or the multicultural type of city when like we see through the bullshit. Like, come on now. Like
yeah, I mean, but would you say that it's not a privilege to be here though? In in
oh,
that sense, it is a privilege with the facilities and the resources provided here.
I would say that.
Yeah, to be in a position to say, okay, we don't have it, but we're going to curate it and we have the resources to do so.
Yeah, like I would say I think that's just where the distinction lies between like places in the Caribbean and like somewhere like Toronto, like the resources, because they have all these types of things that, the Caribbean doesn't have. Like people are willing to kind of like jump to this ship rather than the other ship. But again, like there has to be work done, not just for like the Caribbean from within, but other places as well, looking to help these other countries as well. Like I feel there's just not enough that's being put into the like in terms of support and development. And like that's
Yeah.
where like when people ask me those types of questions, it makes me want to go back and like we need to do better, like as a whole, like as a nation, as a whole world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
So,
if you think about it, Caribbean nations weren't just created willy-nilly. Like
mhm,
they were colonies and they're a land where it's a land of immigrants. I mean, people from Africa interfacing with people from brought in as indentured servants from India and China, and everybody coming together on the land and ruled by, in the case of Jamaica, the Spaniards and then the British. And then once we have independence and emancipation and things that allow us to better get a sense of the illusion of freedom, what happens next? I mean, these
mhm,
people, most of a majority of these people were brought against their will, and so I
right,
do think that if people think the fate of a Caribbean nation is not their responsibility or is not tied to them, then I would say rethink it, because what went into creating the nation in the first place? These larger countries like Britain, or I shouldn't say Britain as a country, but like England, for
yeah,
instance, you know, you were a huge part of why Jamaica is the Jamaica it is now. And um we also, like, as a small country or as a small region, help to serve the world in ways where we provide all of these amenities and spots to heal and take care of people so that when they're ready to take a break, they can take a break. But we're definitely more than that. We are under the surface also people who need to make a living, who have huge ambitions, who
right.
want to matter in the world, and all of those things. So beyond the yeah man and the what are the other
No,
stereotypes
no,
of
it's
Caribbean
true. Like,
people?
you see, like, whether it's like importation or exportation or like, of resources as well, like coming into these places and like taking these resources. And again, like, there's never like this fair trade between. Like, one thing that I've had like talks about as well, even here, is like agriculture or like farming and stuff like that, where like it's not as natural as it is. Like everything has been replaced with machinery and like higher productivity levels and stuff. And they go out and they go to the Caribbean, they take these resources, and people want to say that, oh, we've made significant change. There hasn't been significant change. Maybe something has been like changed or altered in a way to make you believe there's change, but it's really like just hidden truth that they're just keeping away.
Mm, yeah.
So like honestly, like that's where again, like hearing questions like that, it's more deeper to me where it's like, oh, do I just want to move back and just like relax? Like sure, that's cool, but like I think of it more of a like deeper level, like whether it's a political context or just even just a world context as well. Like what could I actually do in terms of like make a huge impact as if I were to go back to Grenada right now, or if you were to go back to Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like
Do you have family in Grenada right now?
yeah,
Like
I do.
recently? Yeah.
Mhm.
When are you planning? When is the next time you're planning to visit?
Soon. That's all I need. Soon. I'm telling you, I don't want to be in Toronto. It's about to like
Sounds
honestly,
like it's overdue the way you said soon.
no, like listen, like if I go back, it's like probably what every 4 years. It's kind of like something like an Olympic period. Like every 4 years, once the next Olympics come in or something like that, like I'm going back. No, it's honestly ridiculous. Like I'm telling you, last I think it was a couple days ago when September just hit, the weather just changed so quickly. So quickly. It was getting colder outside, and I'm like, we're not doing this. No, like give me a plane ticket. I don't care if I have to miss my first week of classes.
When was this last year you're talking about or this year? Because the weather switched up too. The
No,
weather is switching up. It's cooling
like
down
this
a lot.
this year, this year.
Okay, yeah. Honestly, do it. Do it. Like I have my dad is there, my siblings are there, so I have a reason to want to go back even more. My little sister misses me like crazy
Right.
right now, you know. When are you coming back? When are you coming back? When are you visiting? And it's just the pandemic just makes it incredibly difficult to like I went to New York, but that's like down the road from where
Right.
I am.
So it's like a nice car drive, It's like it's whatever.
Yeah. But hopefully things open back soon. I really do hope that for your mental health and stuff, and so you can have fun and meet and see your family you get to go this year.
Oh my gosh. Like I just want to go back, meet my family, probably go to a couple like carnivals or everything, like Jab Jab, Juve. I just want to go
I
and
don't know if they're having those. They're having they would have Jab Jab this year.
listen, like they were doing stuff during the pandemic last year when things were like intensifying. They don't care. They don't
Oh,
care.
oh, whoa. The so when the pandemic hit, I actually bought my carnival costume
Oh
for Jamaica
wow.
Carnival and everything got shut down. Luckily I
My
got my costume sold, but oh gosh, like I definitely want to go back and there's a lot of things to like as we were saying to think about when moving back to the Caribbean, but you cannot take the fact that the Caribbean is a magical place. It's a place you can enjoy, be yourself, be
mhm.
authentic, and the weather is nice and all that. You can't take away those things from it
No
either. So there we go.
everlasting characteristics of the Caribbean.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
oh my gosh. But no, this was such a wonderful talk. Like I really appreciate your time, Dominic, just being here, just talking, opening about your podcast, your journey, everything, talking about a little bit about the Caribbean, the Caribbean. It's I guess it's just like we're just opening our feelings, expressing ourselves. Like again, I feel like you mentioned before, you kind of like see a little bit of yourself in me. I kind of feel the same as well for you. I feel like we're on the same level. Like we're just kind of
We're parts of similar tribes. Let's say that. We're
yeah,
parts of similar tribes, yeah.
absolutely.
Because in order to do what you're doing now, and in order for me to do what I'm doing, you have to be able to see yourself as more than what some people might see you as. Now you have to put yourself in positions where you're uncomfortable or just putting yourself out there. And from you can relate to that, and from you're doing that, so listen, me and you, same tribe, same tribe.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, I just want to say thank you again for being on the Safe Room, and you're welcome back anytime if you like.
Thank you so much for having me, honestly, and for reaching out.
Yes.
It was awesome.
Is it okay if I just say this one last thing? And I just want to say,
Oh,
like, this
go
this has
ahead.
nothing to do with you. It's something that I've experienced this morning, and I just want to address it. and it's a serious matter. And I'm actually going to be on another podcast later on to talk about this. But so I got into an encounter on Instagram about a post. Now, everyone knows that Drake dropped this album yesterday. It was getting a lot of mixed reaction. And all I have to say, there's this individual that sadly I've known for a very long time. I wouldn't say like he was a friend, but like I knew him from my days in like elementary, middle school, high school. Said some derogative comments that just really did not stick with me very well. And honestly, all I have to say is that before people want to spread their opinions, I think it's important that you watch your words and how you say certain things, because there are people who watch it, and you have to be respectful about the history, the historical context based on the situation. So I'm just going to leave it like that. If you guys want to know more, I can leave his account for you guys so you guys can check it out. I'm going to talk more about it in depth on another episode, on another podcast, but I just need to say that I felt his actions were despicable. And if you're listening, this individual right now, if you're listening, I hope that you check yourself. You know how your actions are horrible, they're wrong, and yeah, that's really have to say. And again, I'm sorry if I just downed the mood, but I needed to get that off my chest. I just needed to.
Well, I don't know what the situation is, but I'm glad that you're, putting, well, I don't know if you put them in their place, but setting the energy out.
Oh,
to
I
make
did.
Sure that,
I even put it on my story. If you go check out my story on my Instagram at the Safe Room Podcast, you will see why. You will see why. So yeah. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, go check out my Instagram story at the Safe Room Podcast, and you will see my comment. I will be talking. I kind of said it before this recording that I was going to say my statement right now. So I told people to tune in to the episode we're doing right now tomorrow.
Well, there you have it. You have it.
Sometimes you got to say what you have to say. Like I like to say it's an open space. I try to be like polite and say you can say whatever you want, but there also are boundaries. There has to be like groundkeeping rules and everything in terms of like what you say. So this is the one time you're gonna see a very more like serious me. Like I try to be open and fun, but this is times you go, I have to be serious. I have to.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Absolutely. So, but again, let's just stick on the positive. You're here. Thank you for being on this episode. It was amazing.
I love that transition.
Yes.
Mind you, I had no context where you did not know that message was going to happen, but I'm glad you're saying what you're saying, what's on your chest, what's on your mind, and you're standing up for, being honorable and being, what's the word? Disciplined.
Yeah.
And conscientious. Yeah. So
always
love it. Love to see it.
Always. Yeah. So where can people go check you out and your podcast?
People can check out my podcast on Instagram. We're most live there. It's at Life on Hifi. That's LIFE on Hifi, HIFI. And there is a website that's about to be launched soon. Everything will be updated on the Instagram. So definitely go follow the Instagram to get most of the updates there. We have a newsletter also in the link in bio on the Instagram. And you can find Life on Hifi on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, because we have visuals now as of this year. And anywhere you listen to podcasts, really, just type in Life on Hifi.
All right, sounds perfect. So thank you once again. Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram at the Safe Room Podcast. I'll be making updates for new episodes, any announcements. Make sure you check out my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and I always drop every Friday at noon. Well, this time it's different. I'll be dropping a new episode, but again, I'll be right back on track. I promise. Like there's times like there's gonna be times things are different, but I promise I'm usually Friday at noon. I promise. But thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time.